And I guess folks couldn't hear our banter, Uri. I didn't press the right button, but welcome everybody to the 25th installment of the MPF webinar series, where we've been talking about a variety of issues involving firm leadership, change, the impacts of COVID on the profession. And we're going to do a little change of pace here. And rather than bring guest speakers as we usually do, Uri and I are going to showcase data. That's going to be the highlight of today's program, data. And we're going to move fast, ask a bunch of questions of our audience. We have over 200 people registered today, and great turnout, great topic. Uri, how are things going with you?
Going great. It's an amazing end of the summer, end of a strange summer, and hoping that September, turns it around.
It has.
What
been
about you, John?
Another strange summer, and I'm hoping that things turn around. It looked pretty good a month ago.
Yep.
But boy, with this variant running around out there, things have really changed, and conference planners are rethinking, live conferences, of course. But let's jump right in here. We do have a lot of data we're going to cover, a lot of questions we're going to answer. So let's jump right in. Most of y'all know me. I've been running the Managing Partner Forum for almost 20 years, and this webinar series is a relatively new thing, and Uri Gutfreund as well. If you've come to any of these programs, you know Uri. He's out of the New York, New Jersey area, does programming for managing partners, leaders of smaller and mid-sized law firms in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. So Uri, good to have you with us.
Thanks, John.
Off we go, everybody. Couple of brief announcements. Our webinar series, we're holding pretty good to the first Wednesday of the month. 2 o'clock, we record these sessions, so we will be sharing with you a recording on demand, as well as the handout materials that will include all this polling data we gather today. We've been doing some virtual conferences, I'm sure with more to come. Our website, a nice resource if you're looking for articles or information about law firm leadership and strategic planning and such. And our next in-person event, we're trying for one, fingers crossed, on October 6th, 7th in Chicago, and we're going to drill down on succession planning. And to this point, we're holding true and trying to get an in-person conference under our belts. There are some places remaining, so if you're interested in coming to that fall symposium, check out our website. There are places available. So this is our faculty assembled. I'm working with Ida Abbott, Don Mrazek. Don was the managing partner at Hinshaw Culbertson out of Chicago for many years. And so we're kind of co-chairing this, the three of us. We've got a great faculty, including a handful of managing partners who've successfully taken their firms through transition. We're going to bring on the data. Law firms are so interested in knowing what other firms are doing. So that's what we're going to bring to you today. Some timely, relevant data on trends in law firm compensation systems. We will start off by when you're registered, you had answered some questions. Our topic, we're going to divide it into 4 main subject areas. And as Uri and I were compiling this program and started developing our questions, we came up with quite a few, dozens and dozens of questions. And we were challenged to pare it down into a manageable number. So we've got 20. And we're just scratching the surface, but I think we're going to provide some really good benchmarking data on trends that you can take back to your partnerships, your executive committees, and whatnot. Rapid fire, 20 questions. Uri and I will banter back and forth, share some comments, but the king of today's show is that data. Our next webinar, October 6th, hopefully live from Chicago. And we'll talk about succession planning and bring on some guest speakers who are involved in our faculty at that fall symposium. So that's it with our housekeeping announcements. Let's jump right in.
So when you registered 195 firm leaders, you might recall we asked you to describe what best describes your firm's compensation system for your equity partners. And about a third of you said need some changes. 4% of you need a complete makeover. 25% significant. So about a third of you want to make changes, and about 2/3 of you said, we're kind of sitting good, it's working, we can maybe tweak it here and there. And so interesting first statistic. John, surprise you at all?
Not really, Uri. I think that compensation systems should evolve and adapt and align with firm culture and align with firm strategy. And so we'll get into some of these trends, and we're going to look at, subjective versus objective. We're going to look at transparency, how transparent your firm is in its compensation setting process. No, these don't surprise me, Uri, to be honest with you. What about you?
I'm surprised only 1/3 say it's not working. I do hear a lot of people saying it's not working, and as we've discussed, I think it's on the rise as well as the markets become even more competitive. So let's move on to our second question. Have you made any changes in the past 5 years in your compensation model? About 1/3 of you said yes, and about 2/3 said no, we're fine and have not made significant changes in the past 5 years.
And I think a key word there is significant. And we didn't define that,
Right.
but there is change. And 1 in 3 firms say that they have made some pretty substantial changes to their systems in recent years. And you know what? That's not a bad thing. These compensation systems should not be static, set in stone. The third question we asked at point of registration involved, are you trending toward a more subjective compensation kind of system, or are you trying to objectify it and look more at numbers and KPIs as opposed to kind of a touchy-feely thing? And looky here, there's a very distinct move toward more objective systems that look at collections, origination, a number of different metrics. And Uri, let me ask if this surprises you, this trend toward more objectivity within compensation systems.
No, I think as firms grow, I'm not surprised. As firms grow, markets become more competitive. You have to look at that, and it doesn't, people don't trust you as much. It's competitive out there. You're competing now for maybe the same people. Has to be more objective. It's not just I'll take care of you.
Well, and I think when we're a smaller group and we're just getting started, we have a much better sense of what one another brings to the party. In terms of leadership and rainmaking and really sharp legal skills, mentoring associates. And when we're small, parity was not uncommon. Lockstep was not uncommon. But I think as firms grow, we're looking more, and I don't know my partners as well as I did. There's a much bigger group of them. And I've got to look beyond just, kind of touchy-feely stuff and try to find objective ways to measure contributions. So here we go into our audience polling questions, and we're going to move fast. So get your fingers on the voting buttons and be ready, everybody. And the first question, just kind of a test question, and to give folks on today's call a sense of firm sizes represented. Our first question, we ask it every time, is how many lawyers are at your firm? So if y'all could go ahead and weigh in and tell us a little bit about firm size, and then we'll go off to the races. And vote early, vote often. I've got 80%. Good participation rates here. 80%. 4, 3, 2, 1, and Uri, we got a good balance of firm sizes represented.
Yep. Yeah, pretty diverse. Look at that.
Nice, almost a bell curve.
Good. Yeah, so, perfect.
That's cool. Let's move on to our first set of questions. Uri, you were going to take the lead on this one, and that is,
sure,
you set us up.
Sure, John, just close the poll there. Perfect. Yeah. So partner satisfaction. Generally, how satisfied are your firm's equity partners with your firm's current compensation system? John, you want to put that up? Are you very satisfied?
Are your
somewhat
partners
satisfied?
Satisfied.
Yes. They're okay with it. They're somewhat dissatisfied, or they're very dissatisfied.
And Uri, I'm going to ask you, because I can cheat and see these results coming in, but I'm going to ask you to predict what you think the most partners feel about their firm's compensation systems before we do the reveal.
Yeah, I mean, based on the registration where people said it was kind of working, I'm going to go with neutral to somewhat satisfied will be most of the people. Let's see.
And that would be a good answer.
Yeah.
That would be a very good answer. Most partners, 55% say they're somewhat satisfied. I mean, there's no perfect system. There's no perfect system. And, lawyers can be a tough group to please. When we're talking about money, everybody's got a dog in the hunt. So there's the answer to that satisfaction level. Our next question is trying to get a sense of, we asked it when you're registered, a sense of, do you tend to lean on objective data? Do you tend to lean towards subjective firm building contributions? And are you trending in any which direction when it comes to this kind of spectrum of subjective versus objective? So if you would, select the statement that best describes your comp system. Are you working parity or lockstep? Is it mostly an objective system with heavy weight on origination credit, bringing in the work? Is it an objective system that more heavily weights collections, getting the work done and paid for? You kind of a blend of objective, subjective contributions, looking at both relatively equally, or do you lean subjective? And Uri, what do you think our crowd's going to say to this question? Are we leaning objective? What do you think?
We are mostly objective, heavy on collections is my prediction.
And here would be our answers.
And I
spot on. Mostly objective, heavy on collections. That's what I see most commonly. We're looking at dollars in the door. Directly related to that equity partner's work product, dollars in the door, heavily weighting collections. I like personally the fourth choice there, Uri, where we're looking at the objective, we're looking at your numbers, we're looking at your hours, your collections, your origination, but we're factoring in firm citizenship, leadership, mentoring, teamwork, sharing, these sorts of contributions that are really, really important. And I often cite David Maister in True Professionalism, where he talks about billable hours. That's important for today's income, but our non-billable firm building contributions, investing in firm, investing in people, investing in clients, not bringing in dollars today, but bringing in tomorrow's dollars, and make sure that we are investing in our people, mentoring, training, evaluation, these sorts of things. Our clients, let's never not pay attention to the clients, and our firm and its policy, leadership.
John, now, does that show weakness to you? I mean, all that emphasis on current collection.
It shows short-sightedness to me. It shows that at the end of the day, the billable hour is king in many law firms. It's the money you bring in on your back that is the most important criteria. So say 50%, 55% of today's audience. And I think, yes, that's an important contribution. But there's more than that. And as you become an owner, maybe a little less grinding and a little more finding and minding of work and mentoring of talent as you move up the ranks of ownership. That's my general approach to, how a compensation to an equity partner might change as that equity partner moves up seniority. Keep moving.
Let's look at the trend on that question.
Let's do that. The trend on, are you moving more objective? Are you moving more subjective? And if so, how dramatically? And if you would, this is the way we phrase this question. It was fun coming up with these questions and the answers. and kind of tricky, you know. But the trending on the compensation system, are we going much more objective, kind of staying the same? We trending subjective? And Uri, this shouldn't surprise us. It's kind of consistent with what we picked up when people registered, which is we're moving more objective.
Can you share that, John?
If growth is part of our, if growth is what we're about, we're moving to more objective ways to value the contributions of our owners.
Wow, this is stark. Nobody, almost no one's going more subjective. Look at that.
It looks like two, three people on the call. Of the, I'm looking at our head count, 195. Only 4 say they're moving toward a considerably more subjective. So yeah, that's pretty compelling if you're looking for a trend, which is what today's program, of course, is all about. Now, don't you love this image?
Reveal it, John. Yeah.
The process.
Oh!
The compensation setting process, kind of like making sausage. It's not always
comments
pretty,
are going crazy here.
Comments
are going crazy here.
So let's look at the process through which firms go. And if you would, select the term that best describes your firm's process. And Uri, I stepped over you. This was your question. I apologize.
No worries. So from the list below, which term best describes the way your firm sets compensation? Are you very open, transparent, smooth and easy? Is it very open and transparent, but not quite smooth and easy? Somewhat open, but not much back and forth and discussion? Or is it black box where it's either one person or a very small group that comes up and sets compensation?
Yeah,
so
nobody sees the reports. Nobody sees the compensation schedules. We trust the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain that he's being fair to everybody.
Yep.
Jones Day is famous for its black box, but Big Law doesn't see it much anymore. And Uri, I can cheat and see the results. What do you think our crowd is at in terms of how it would characterize the compensation process within their firms?
I think very open. A lot of back and forth.
I am surprised because I would agree with you. But look at that. Seems that we've got a small subset of partners maybe setting compensation without much back and forth. 33% of the firms. I'm shocked to see that 16% say they got a black box going on.
I'm shocked.
They're not open with that information. I'm very surprised that so many firms indicate that they're running a black box. You know, the theory behind that is we have nothing to fight about. If I don't see my partner's numbers, I don't see their hours and their collections, and I don't know what they're making, I got nothing to fight about. I just trust that the black box is treating me fairly. That's one of the pros to the black box. But most lawyers want to see the numbers. They want to know what's going on. They want to know how their performance compares with their partners. And know that they're getting a fair shake. So I'm kind of surprised to see this number of firms reporting the black box approach.
John, you know, me too, but let's look at the trend here. So we asked now in this process that we just asked you about, which way are you trending in your firm? Are you becoming more transparent or less transparent? So are you considerably more transparent, trending on your compensation setting? Are you somewhat more transparent, about the same, little less, or a lot less? Are you going towards that black box, or are you going towards that open, well discussed? And I think that's going to be very interesting, John, to see how people answer this.
And the votes are coming in fast and furious. And Uri, before I do the reveal, what do you think? Give me your prediction.
My prediction is we're getting more transparent, but of course the 16% black box surprised me as well. So.
Well, indeed, we are becoming more and more transparent.
Yep.
More objective, more transparent. We've just found two very distinct trends so far. More objectivity, more transparency in most compensation system. More than half say we're running about the same.
Mm-hmm.
Very few firms are holding information closer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once that genie's out of the bottle, it's hard to put it back in.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
so
think
this,
there's another trend that we haven't talked about, but it certainly as millennials have entered the workforce and the ranks of partnership, they're all for transparency. That's certainly a trend, a millennial feature, right?
and then we thought it'd be interesting to ask where within your law firm is most of the work around compensation setting occurring, most of the decision making occurring within your executive management committee. They take on the job of setting compensation. Do you have a separate compensation committee that does most of the heavy lifting in and around compensation? Are you a very democratic firm where everybody's got to be involved making the sausage? We got that black box going on, or is there some other way? We set compensation among the firm owners? And we have done data questioning on comp committees before at our conferences and webinars, and find that about 40%, 40% of smaller and mid-sized law firms do have a separate compensation committee, separate and apart from its executive committee. About 70% claim to have an executive or management committee. But here, this data, I think, reflects some of that, in that about 40% of our firms, probably firms without compensation committees, the executive committee takes on that role. 36%, that's about consistent with our 40% that we have found in prior surveys, have compensation committees. Now, how we appoint that committee, are they elected? Are they appointed? Who appoints them? Is there turnover within that comp committee? Because I frequently hear that the compensation committee does a lot of self-nest feathering, or nest self-feathering, whatever term I want to use there. It's not easy to make the sausage. Uri, are you seeing any surprise in this data?
I'm not. I just would make one other point, which is I've sometimes seen firms, and I'm sure you have too, John, where the compensation committee sort of acts as its own management committee, right? I mean, if they're holding the power of the purse, they'll sometimes set goals and strategies that maybe the executive committee hasn't really set up. And that's kind of shocking, but I've seen it, and it's concerning, where we have these compensation committees that sort of run their own show.
It said if you have a separate compensation committee, you really don't have an executive committee, because partners are responding to the compensation committee and how it's making decisions. And typically there's a little overlay between executive and compensation. Some of the same people sit on those two committees. But I think how you select that compensation committee, is there turnover? I find that most comp committees try like the dickens to be fair and do a good job. What's in the best long-term interests of the firm. It can be a thankless job, but bring in some young people, bring in the critics in so they can see how it's done, and perhaps be a little more appreciative of the process. Not a bad idea.
And John, the trend on that?
The trend on this is how much. Oh no, we're not doing a trend on that. That's the last question of this section.
Okay.
That's our
what do you think the trend is on that? Forgive me. What do you think the trend is on that? And what's your recommendation on that? Separate committee or joint committee?
If it's selected the right way and people perceive that committee to have the firm's best long-term interests at heart and are trying to do a fair job at cutting up the pie. So how it's selected, is there, if you're a multi-office, does each office have a representative? If you've got multiple departments, does each department have a representative? Do the junior lawyers, junior equity partners have any representation on that committee? So I think if it's the optics are good around it, and it's communicating effectively, I like the idea of a separate compensation committee myself.
Okay.
Not everything can be done by the executive committee. So here we're going to ask a set of questions and look at the four main areas that firms often weight as part of their compensation. And then we're going to ask for each of these four areas how heavily your firm weights these different contributions. And then we're going to ask which way you're trending, more weight to it, less weight to it. And the four areas we came up with, and there are many, many others, but we had to bring this into a manageable set of questions. We thought we'd go with seniority. How much does seniority factor in to what your equity partners take home? Their origination credit, something a lot of firms weight fairly heavily, but not everybody. I work with a number of firms that don't track origination at all because it can be divisive and competitive. Collections, that's that working attorney collections, and firm building contributions, the non-billable stuff. Managing partners all the time. I feel undervalued and underappreciated. My partners don't seem to value my non-billable firm building contributions. So that's how this set of questions are going to run. And we're going to go real quick through these as we look at the clock, and we're about halfway through today's program. And the first question speaks to seniority. And how heavy a factor is seniority in what equity partners make? There's still firms out there that are pure lockstep. I just finished a project with one, purely seniority driven. That's all they look at. So how much do you weight seniority at your firm?
Be honest.
And I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, and in more than half, it doesn't count for anything. 1% say it's very heavily weighted, a handful of firms, but most seem to have moved beyond seniority to more performance-based compensation systems. Let's look at the trend on that seniority thing before we go to some of these performance-based KPIs. And this, are you given more or less weight to seniority in recent years as part of your firm's compensation system? And if you would kind of vote quickly, and Uri, you got a prediction for us on this one? Is seniority carrying more or less weight?
I think people are going to say less weight than in the past. I actually had a different take on this, which is I was surprised so many still do consider it, but I think people are going to say less.
Trending less.
About the same. About the same, but less. Yeah.
About the same, but if you had to look at a trend there,
yeah. Oh yeah, sure.
1 in 3 are throwing seniority out the door.
Oh yeah, sure.
You know, it should factor in, but I think in a very minor way. You know, it's more about performance, not
it's performance versus. Yeah, that's certainly the trend there.
Now here's a performance indicator for many firms, and how heavily is origination credit factored within your equity partner compensation system?
Ooh,
Boy.
John, I know you see this, but what's your, if without cheating, what is it, John? Is origination important?
Oh, and no clients, no law firm. We've got to take good care of our rainmakers who bring the work in to feed everyone. We got to take good care of these people. And here is the weighting origination credit has. Pretty fairly even among those choices. 14% don't measure origination credit at all. In 14%, it's a very important, heavily weighted factor. But origination credit is important. We understand the spirit behind origination credit, but I think, you know, rewarding origination credit for life is not going to help with client transition and cross-selling. We get into my client cultures, and I think sunsetting origination, sharing origination are good concepts to explore. Let's look at the trending around origination credit. Are we moving to more heavily weighted in most of our firms here today? Or are we backing off or kind of keeping it about the same level of weight? And we're going to find here, this isn't, you know, some firms are amping it up. In other firms, we're kind of holding steady. Origination credit does remain a very heavy factor. If we're moving in any direction, it might be toward a little more weight on it if we had to pick up a trend. Would you agree, Uri, or how we interpret that?
Absolutely. That trend, and I don't think that's, you know, we were talking before, the competitive marketplace. It's getting more, not less.
Here's the collections question. We saw this was the #1 weighted item in our earlier polling question. So we should, not surprisingly, see this question very heavily weighted. And I'm surprised to see 7% say it doesn't factor in personal collections. That's surprising to me. I think it is among the measurements we use to assess equity partner contribution. And our trending around collection, are we trending to weight it more heavily or less heavily, or kind of holding it about the same in recent years? And Uri, as the votes are coming in on this one, I'm going to ask for your kind of what you're seeing out there in terms of how collections factor in.
Oh, well, it seems to be, certainly from the group from the earlier polling, this is the biggest measure of the compensation. So I would say it has been and will remain very considerable in the future.
And here is our polling. And again, we've got about 195 law firms weighing in here. Mid-size, you saw the sizes, our first polling question. So yeah, it seems to be getting a little more weight and a heavily weighted contribution that firms look at. And then let's look at this last one that I'm so high on, which is the fuzzy stuff, the firm building stuff, the mentoring, the leadership, the rainmaking, all those good things that can't be measured in terms of today's dollars in the door. But are they factored in? And Uri, as the results are coming in, let me query you and see what you think, how heavily you think this factors in.
Unfortunately, I think we're going to see moderately weighted here. Yeah. This is worse than I thought. This is worse than I thought.
So the poor managing partner not only has to lead the firm and invest all that non-billable time in leadership and management, but expected to maintain a full book of business and a full level of productivity.
He's not getting paid. She's not getting paid.
We've asked who would want the managing partner job under those circumstances.
Tough job. Tough job. No pay.
We've asked some questions and we couldn't get them in here as to how managing partners get paid. And they get there's no perfect, you know, it's all over the map. Some get nada, some get a stipend, some get a percentage of firm profits, some get a relief of the billable hour expectation. All sorts of ways managing partners are compensated for all this non-billable time they contribute to the firm. 22%, we don't count non-billable time for nothing, according to what I'm reading here.
John, I think I know what you're going to say, because you've sort of tipped your hand on this. You've called it an investment. You said that good stuff, and yet it's not being rewarded as part of the compensation. How do you sync that? I mean, and we just saw it's so undervalued. Why do you think that is?
Because we can't fib on the dollars in the door. We can count them. There's no subjectivity around it. It is what it is.
Okay.
And you know, who gets credited for that dollar? And does it fall into an origination column, a supervising attorney column, a working attorney column? The old modified hail and door many firms went to, that kind of 1/3 of your comp is based on what you originate, 1/3 is what you collect, and 1/3 is on these more subjective factors. That was a very popular system back in the 80s and the 90s. Of course, hail and door crashed. I don't think it was the fault of their compensation system necessarily, but lawyers will point to that. I just think it's important. I'm a big proponent of job descriptions for managing partners, department heads, practice group leaders. If folks are doing a good job in these important roles, they're investing some time here, meaningful time, firm building time. And looky here, in so many firms, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't get measured. It doesn't get rewarded directly. We're still looking at your dollars. We're looking at your origination column. And there's a lot of lawyers that don't want to be involved in management and governance, because guess what? It's a distraction from making money. If we're a very formulaic system that rewards your productivity and your origination, leadership's a distraction from that. So these are interesting things to think about as your firm. We approach year end and compensation setting time for many law firms, and maybe making some tweaks to our system. And we'll look at, in some closing remarks, some things that Uri and I kind of feel passionate about. Here's the direction of where the trend on the weighting for the non-billable firm building contributions. Are we trying to find ways to measure, reward this, work in that direction, or not? Is there a trend here that we can pick up on? And we've got about 60% of you all having voted at this point. I often kid that, living in Georgia, we know how to vote count. We had to do it quite a few times earlier this year. And here's the answer on this one in terms of looks like 1/3 of firms are trying to bring a little more recognition and financial reward to these non-billable contributions, but 57% sitting pat. But we do see a little bit of a trend here. I think we can pick up in our data. So that's kind of our rapid fire section on the 8 factors we so frequently see and which way they are trending.
So we're going to move on a little bit in our topics and look at a couple of other issues that go into the compensation on the results side. So our first question in this category, and we've got 2, is how we have multiples, what sometimes is called compression. John?
No, I think we're missing a question here, Uri. Are we factors when setting compensation? This is a question about shared origination credit. And these were my questions, Uri. I shouldn't have passed.
Oh, I interrupted you. Forgive me. Go ahead.
No, you didn't. I passed the baton to you when I should have kept it. So this is the question around origination credit. And is there a sharing of credit within your firm? Is there a set policy in place at the firm level that promotes and encourages sharing, maybe practice group origination? Is it kind of worked out between the 2 lawyers fighting over who gets credit for the matter? We know we really don't have a clear policy in place, or in 14% of firms, it doesn't apply because we don't look at origination credit. But in most firms, it's worked out between the partners involved if there's a origination sharing arrangement. Who brought in the client 10 years ago versus who got the call to handle today's matter. Often that lawyer who brought the client in 10 years ago will lay claim to it, but the lawyer who got the call and opened the file might also have a legitimate claim to it. He or she got the call after all. It seems reasonable to me that there's some sort of sharing there. of origination credit. My first law firm, while I was in-house marketer, was all about sharing credit, and we sunset the origination credit at the client level after 3 years. So it became a firm client. We tracked origination at 2 levels: the client level, where we get that sunset after 3 years, and the matter level. That's the lawyer who got the call. So, trying to originate at both the client level and the matter level, origination can create a lot of controlling, hoarding, my client, my portable book of business, because I want to be able to take these clients with me. And if they know other lawyers here at the firm, that might be a little more difficult to pry them loose.
John, if you just keep that slide up for a second. So roughly a quarter of the firms voting do not share origination credit. What's your pitch to them why they should do it?
To promote sharing and teamwork, to promote cross-selling, to promote transition from senior lawyers to junior lawyers. I've seen it again and again. That's my client. Nobody talks to my client but me. Mm-hmm. And I would argue they're our clients. You're part of a team. You're part of a firm. And although the research, and I'm still convinced, generally speaking, clients hire lawyers, not law firms. To the lawyers, I say, you're selling the team. You're selling the minder who's going to grow the client. You're selling the grinders who are going to churn out the work. Make sure your client meets the team. And we've got a good sticky relationship between our largest institutional clients and the firm. It's not just depending on work coming through only one lawyer. I think origination credit's important. I like the sunsetting concept, and I like sharing origination credit. So we're going out there as a team when we market, when we go meet with clients. We're not fighting over who gets credit. As long, we want to make sure that the client comes to the firm. Now, Uri, these are your questions here, and they speak to compression.
Put up the question, please, John. So what is the multiple between your lowest and highest paid equity partners? Now, this is John referenced it a few times. We had a lot of questions. We compressed our questions to sort of make this more manageable, but this is something, and there's a lot of meaning in why this might be, but let's poll the audience on this. What's the multiple? Are you less than 2 between your low and high, 3 and 4, or on the other extreme, more than 9 from your lowest to your highest? Now, John, without peeking, what do you think?
I think we're going to see somewhere in that 4 to 5 range, 4 to 5 multiple between the lowest paid equity partner and the highest paid equity partner. We want to make sure our top performers are being valued and compensated their worth, and they're happy, because we don't want the top performers leaving.
And that should push that number up over time. If we're going to pay them adequately, as we'll say later, but if we're going to pay them, that number can go higher and higher, and that's, I think, the trend. Let's see. Wow. You nailed 3 to 4.
I'm surprised to see how many are less than 2. They've got that much compression between the highest and lowest paid. 20%, pretty compressed there.
Well, I think we're going to drill down. The ones that are less than 2, I don't know if they are adequately compensating everyone. Well, meaning, is that a reflection of people's economic contribution, or is that just a compensation decision?
Well, first we're going to ask if you think your top performers are being properly compensated,
which I think was in that
compensated for what they're bringing to the table. But before we do, we're going to ask the trend about your spread. Is it getting wider, or are you becoming a little more compressed over time? And you see these spreads. I've worked with firms where the top guys are making $2-3 million a year, and you've got the rank and file service partners, equity partners, making $200,000-300,000 a year, and that can create some tension between the haves and the have-nots. I would ask why these low performers are equity partners to begin with. and perhaps consider the non-equity partner track to accommodate people who are just not running hard. But Uri, what do you think the trend is on compression?
I think the spread is pretty much going to be about the same.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on. Not much movement here
Right.
in terms of the
little bit more spread, a little bit more spread, meaning they're paying their high performers a little more, I would think. Right? You see a little bit more here. Not a lot.
I think I see a pretty solid about the same here when we look at, if there's one slide that's hunting in on about the same, this one's this one seems to capture it for me. And then here are our final two polling questions. Again, we're going to compile all of this, send it back to you. You'll get it early next week. And if you want PowerPoint that you can present, at a partner meeting or executive committee meeting, just come back to us. We're happy to share that PowerPoint. And lawyers, it's very persuasive when you present your lawyers with fresh, timely data if you want them to think about, making some changes. So often, I mentioned it early, I'll recommend a change to a law firm and the pushback. We've never done it that way before. Who else is doing it? Will invariably be the first. Who else is doing that, John? And to be able to present data, I find is very, very persuasive. So this speaks to your top performers. And this is an Uri question. Set us up, Uri.
So do you believe that your firm's top performers are adequately compensated? Are they significantly undercompensated? Are they somewhat undercompensated? About right, somewhat overcompensated, or significantly overcompensated. So your firm's top performers, your rainmakers, the ones who are bringing in a lot of business, do you think they would, what's your perception? Are they significantly undercompensated? Overcompensated? Let us know. I think we're going to see something very interesting here, John. What do you think?
My experience has been that most top performers feel they are undervalued. And if they're starting to shake the cage a little bit. They want more, they're going to leave. I want more, or I'm going to leave, and I'm going to take my clients with me. That can be pretty disruptive. And you got to wonder about, are they a team player, a firm citizen, or is it all about me and them? I think most top performers are somewhat undercompensated. Here's what our data says. Boy, I'm surprised to see 17% think the top performers are overcompensated. But that's an interesting set of data for sure. And our last polling question before we get to some closing remarks, I wanted to make sure we left about 10 minutes, so we're right on time, Uri. Boy, we do a good job watching the trains, I must say. Are you lifting up your chronic underperformers? And Uri, this is your question again.
Do you think that they are significantly undercompensated? Are you even paying undercompensation for your underperformers? Are they somewhat undercompensated, about right? Or do you think that they are overcompensated, or are they significantly overcompensated? And this is something also, John, that what do you think first, John?
Well, I had to cheat on this one. I'm trying not to cheat, but I had to cheat and watch the boat come in. And I am not surprised with what I see here, which is that 2/3 of our participants, 195 law firms, feel that their chronic underperformers are overcompensated.
Bingo.
And my question would be, why? Unless you're just charitable and feel sorry for your chronic underperformers.
Well, why? I mean, we worded this question to be chronic underperformers. So this isn't the partner who had a bad year. This is the partner who always has a bad year. And I think this
isn't doing much about it.
People pay, or some firms' compensation are based on what they think people will bring in, potential. Maybe they're taking too much from the overperformers. We saw a little bit about that, right? Leaving a little bit of money on the table.
This
Especially
one surprises me, Uri, that
yeah.
2/3 of firms, firm leaders on today's call feel that we're overcompensating our underperformers. Boy, again, why? Where are they going to go? It's not like they have a whole lot of clout to jump ship and go to another law firm if they don't bring a book of business with them. I'm surprised to see that high number. But the data is what it is, and we will share. We're very transparent, very open, and so we got nothing to hide. We will share this data, and if you have any questions, I think we're going to do another session on compensation. We didn't even get into associate compensation models, for example. How you pay managing partners, how y'all get paid, how much time you spend in the role. So I think we're going to come back to compensation because it is such a hot issue, and we certainly couldn't cover it all in a 1-hour program. But we hope you found this helpful, and we got some good data there for you to share with your colleagues. And just a few closing observations, and one is, and I'll send you some articles. I went and fished out some really nice articles, timely articles on compensation that I'll include in our handouts. The systems vary widely. They really are all over the place. Very open to the black box. Very subjective to we're all about the numbers. I mean, it really is all over the place, and there is no perfect system. You know, what's right for your firm and its culture and its firm strategy? Are we trying to promote cross-selling? Are we trying to grow and incent marketing and business development? Are we trying to encourage folks getting along and being good firm citizens, getting their time in, getting their bills out, showing up at meetings, being good role models? So what is it that you want to measure, reward, incent? And I'm all about a system that promotes firm first contributions, firm first behaviors, firm first attitudes. We're in this together. And focusing on growing the pie, the size of the pie, and being less obsessed with my size of the piece of the pie. If the pie's bigger, we all eat more. And I think we can grow the pie more effectively if we work together and share and cross-sell and set up industry teams and client succession programs that encourage that senior lawyer to pass it along rather than to hold on to it till the very end. Fairness and transparency, I believe, are very important concepts. Is your system fair? It's not going to be perfect. Rough justice is the term we often hear. There's no, you're always going to have people who feel they were under-rewarded. But generally, is it a fair system? I like transparency myself. I think as an owner of the law firm, you have a right to see the books and the numbers. And in the spirit of teamwork and firm first, I think transparency is an important characteristic of a good compensation system. I think your system evolves over time as your firm matures and evolves over time. And certainly take darn good care of your top performers, because if they don't like carrying dead wood, and we don't want to see them jumping ship if they feel that they're being undervalued and could be significantly, make significantly more money somewhere else. So take care of those top performers. They are important drivers to the firm and its future. Uri, any other observations, comments that you might add to this list I came up to take us home?
Sure, John. I just have two quick points. Number one, you made some great points, and I think to summarize, compensation doesn't stand alone. The number isn't important in specifics, but it's part of your firm's strategy. So I think all of these examples are spot on. It's the firm's strategy, and then we use the compensation plan to effectively incentivize those kinds of behaviors and that sense of a joint culture and a joint firm. I thought that was excellent. And then just my last point is a bunch of, in fact, the number was very high of people who said our compensation plan is just fine. And one of the things, John, you and I were talking about in the last couple of days as we put together this session is that in today's environment, COVID even before COVID. It's a tougher economic, more competitive law firm environment. Your compensation plan is going to be tested like it's never been tested before. People are calling your partners much more now than they were in the past. Cash, rainmakers are much more valued even than they were a year ago. So if you have any concerns, or if you haven't looked at your compensation in a while, it's certainly the time to do it, because the last thing you want is to learn about how out of sync you are to either your market or to the competitiveness in your region, which is when someone who is a rainmaker can leave. And that's really the most dangerous challenge when you put together the compensation. John, you said it has to be fair. It also has to be competitive.
Well, and I think, laterals, if your firm is entertaining laterals or looking to acquire other firms or groups within other firms, and so many mid-sized firms have this appetite for growth, and we're going to achieve it through attracting clients with books of business. That's how we're going to grow the firm. Partners, laterals with books of business, laterals with books of business. Everybody's looking for laterals with books of business. But they're going to test your compensation system as you chat with these groups or these individual laterals. And what do you measure? What do you reward? Because they're going to, figure out how they line into that system. And, is that big book of business rewarded? If I've got a big book of business, I want to find my way to a law firm that rewards origination credit very, very heavily. On the other hand, if I'm more of a service partner that bills 2,000 hours a year consistently and collects it, I might be looking for that firm that's more heavily weighted toward collections. So, whenever you're talking to people about potential merger, lateral, that compensation conversation is going to pop up early, as it should. And you should be able to describe your system. Is simple, understandable, fair, transparent, as you go out and talk to folks you're looking to join your firms.
John, this has been a great topic. There's so much more to say, but we are.
It's it's a little different format, Uri, than the guest speakers we usually bring, and I'll be real interested in the evaluations, what people thought of today's program. So please take a few minutes before you leave us. You'll get directed to a short survey. What'd you like best? What'd you like least? Topics for the future. And give us your feedback so we know if we're on the right track and we want to go with more of this type programming where data is king, or do you like the guest speakers where we bring some folks on and banter a bit about a topic of import? So give us your feedback, please. Uri, good to see you.
Good to see you too, John. Thank you.
Enjoy the final weekend of summer. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. And if you have any questions, you want to chat with Uri and I directly, please feel free to reach out to us. Here's our contact information. And either of us would be pleased to carry forth the conversation. So,
hi, John.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye, Uri. Good to see you.